Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Amy Yip. Amy is a life transformation and mental fitness coach who works with ambitious, high-achieving women to let go of the shoulds and be the author of their own life story. Because if you don't tell your story, someone else will. After 16 plus years of building and leading global teams in organizations like Google, Clorox, and Booz Allen, Amy left the corporate world in January 2020, sold all her belongings in her New York City apartment, and took a one-way flight to Ghana with her husband to volunteer at a breast cancer nonprofit. The plan was to volunteer until May, then travel the world, but COVID changed those plans and she ended up stuck in Ghana for 7 months. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Amy. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. I'm excited to, our precursor, my listeners, that listen often know that I like having conversations and getting to know people before we start recording. It drops our defenses. It makes us more comfortable to have the amazing conversation I'm sure we're going to have. I like to start off though, Amy, in all my podcasts, to me, and other people that do podcasting don't necessarily do it this way or agree, but I love knowing people's origin story. And I'm not talking about just, oh, here's Amy, she's finished school and this is what she accomplished. That's superficial to me. It's not enough. I want to know Amy's origin story, the key things from your childhood that you can remember, the earliest recollections to adulthood to lead you to where you're at currently.
So one thing that stuck out for me as soon as you mentioned that was my entrepreneurial spirit as a child. I was maybe 8 or 9 and I started a friendship making bracelet business. And, I was always artsy, crafty, creative, and I started designing my own. And people started asking me, that is so cool. Can you make me one? And all of a sudden I was like, well, there's a business opportunity, right? Like there's demand, there's me making this. So I ended up having my mom take me to the store to buy the string and I paid her, the money for it. And I started making it. I created a lookbook. I even hired a friend because business was booming and I had to teach my friend how to make these things. And I would assign her certain ones and, take orders and let people know, okay, your order will be ready in a week. And that was just one example. But throughout my childhood into adulthood, I have always been very entrepreneurial. Even when I had a full-time corporate job, I would have a side business because there's just something about being an entrepreneur that it sparks me, it gives me joy, and it's deeply ingrained.
That's awesome. It always intrigues me, as I mentioned, to know people's origin story. And then when you start hearing it, some people's are more in depth, but yours is not that it's not in depth. It's very focused in the fact that you were an entrepreneur at a very young age. I love that. And it makes me smile as you were telling me the story, because I think about the friendship bracelets that my kids would, they'd make, or they'd go somewhere and they'd come home. And I remember my one daughter, she got into making them just as a hobby.
Mhm.
and she put one on me, and I don't remember how long I wore it until it literally disintegrated, right? But
Mhm.
it makes me smile because that's, it's not the fact that it's this friendship bracelet. It makes me smile because you were already showing a tenacious spirit, an entrepreneur spirit, getting your mom to help you out, hiring a friend. Like, who does that at 8, 9 years of age?
Apparently I do. My mom used to make
Yes,
fun of, she was like,
I
okay.
think it's awesome. Like, I've never heard, I've like, I've heard lots of people that start their own little entrepreneur journeys and stuff, like, but nothing that's that unique. I had a paper route. That was my journey to starting to be an entrepreneur. I started helping friends to make extra money, and next
Mhm.
thing I know, I had my own routes, and yeah, I made my own way. My parents give me the basics of life. You want something else, you got to work for it. So my sisters weren't necessarily as entrepreneurial as I was. They have become that way, and as adults. But back as a kid, I was the only one of us three. I was the youngest, two older sisters, and yeah, all of a sudden, all my friends were jealous because I would have this or that. Oh, must be nice. Your parents? No, my parents didn't buy it. I worked my ass off, and I have that money, and I saved it, and I bought it myself. Thank you very much. Right. So I understand the
Mhm.
entrepreneur. It wasn't necessarily my own, it was my own route, my own business. I had to collect money. I had to do all these different things in order to run it. Right. Learned how to write checks back then. There was no any other way, really. You had to write checks or give cash. Right. So
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to give a 11, 12-year old a credit card.
probably not.
So that's amazing. I love that you're entrepreneurial all the way up to, as you mentioned, you still had side hustles, side
Mhm.
jobs, right?
Mhm.
So that's awesome. So you're a life transformation and mental fitness coach. You work with ambitious, as you mentioned, high achieving women to let go of the shoulds and be the author of their own life story. Can you
Yep.
tell the listeners and I exactly what letting go of the should is and what some details of their process are that you take people through so that they can write their own story?
Yeah. So I always use the analogy of an onion, right? And deep down at our core, we know what matters to us. We know our values. We know what is important. And throughout life, you get these layers of the onion. And I like to call them the shoulds. And they are whether it's parents, teachers, managers, society, loved ones all over that tell you who you should and shouldn't be, what should and shouldn't matter, like all of those shoulds. And so part of the process of the coaching work I do with people is to peel back those layers to figure out what really matters to me. And one of the very first things that I do as a starting point with people is one is exploring their values. And I'm not saying like your top 10 values, but your top four, 3 to 4. And the reason this matters is because most of us have never actually sat down to say, well, what are the 3 to 4 most important things to me? And am I living my life aligned to those things? The other thing that I do with people is look at their childhood. We look at interests, favorite subjects, things they used to do for fun. And the reason I do this is because when you were a kid, you did things for the fun of it, right? If you had a dream of, let's say, I want to be an astronaut, you don't then follow it with, but I would need to go to school for X number of years, and then my success rate would be this much, and I would make this much in income. So it's really not feasible. You just say, I want to be an astronaut. And you put on a helmet and maybe, like a suit, and you start running around and saying, I'm an astronaut. And so being able to explore things that truly brought you joy as a child is very telling of who you are at your core and the things that truly matter to you versus when you became an adult and you started becoming the serious person, and the main thing for you is financials and money and being on this hamster wheel.
Oh, wow. That's that is so important. That's everybody go through what you're talking about. Understanding I like the fact you're not your top 10 values, but what's your top 1 to 4? Because really at the end of the day, people don't understand what their core values are. They don't understand what they represent in their life It's always based on outside influences and how their
Mhm.
values, learn behavior from all types of people growing up, not
Mhm.
just our parents. So I really appreciated that. And, just I like the learning to live life in alignment. How many of people that we meet on a daily basis are suffering in quiet desperation because they don't have alignment to what their purpose is. They're
Yep.
living on that hamster wheel of life. They don't understand. And it's okay, listeners, to reach out to people such as Amy or myself and get coaching. It's okay to not know. People beat
Mhm.
themselves up, especially younger people, the young teenagers going into adulthood. They're unsure of what they want in life because it's not taught in school. It's all
Mhm.
very superficial that they care. There is some
Mhm.
people in the school system that care, but majority of them are just going to work, go home, get paid, living on a hamster wheel themselves. And people want to know that, they don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care, then they want to know how much you know. So it's
Um,
it's imperative what you're teaching, and looking at the childhood is where it really all starts,
mhm.
and getting out that truth or what they thought was their truth. So that's amazing. Is there any specific process you do to help them write their own story?
So it depends on what you as the person are working on. And I will say, when you mentioned, so it's okay not to know, even with your values. I have had clients come in and they have done the exercise or the worksheet, and then they come in with these 4 values and they question, like, I don't know if this is really the right values or not. And so, complementary to that exercise, I have them do the highs and lows of their life. And we look at patterns. And there's a magic about not just doing the exercise, but then talking it through with myself or someone else or a coach, right? Because as they're talking through the highs and lows, you start to see patterns. The high points in their life, you will start seeing their values come to life, because and it's a high point because they're living aligned to their values. The low points are when those things aren't there. And I've had clients where they would say something is a value, and then as we're looking at the highs and lows, we realized that it was missing, like it was never mentioned. So for example, one of my clients said family is a value. Throughout her whole lifeline, she made no mention of her family at all. And I pointed that out to her, and she was like, well, I was taught family comes first, right? So it's one of those shoulds. You should value family. And she realized, but and she realized I don't really care that much about family. Like, I love them, they matter, but they're not the top 4. They're not the top 3 or 4 things. But I feel so bad saying that. Um, and so it really is about helping people to open up and to understand the deeper layers. And so it truly depends on what people come to me with. I've had one client that came to me trying to figure out what's next in my career and what would give me fulfillment. And we discovered all these things. And then it led down this path of this realization that she knows what she wants. The thing that's holding her back from making moves is a fear. And it's the fear of scarcity, fear of loss of money. And that comes from her childhood where her parents were very wealthy and lost it all. And so she has a fear of that happening if she actually, goes after what matters to her. And so the beauty of coaching is that there's no clear path. It's kind of like life. It's not a linear path. There's not like, I do this, then this, then this. It is a journey of uncovering. Like from the beginning, I would have never been able to say, oh, yeah, it's your fear of money. That's what's holding you back. But it was uncovered. And so we started working with that because that was what was holding her back from making the shift she wanted.
I love that response. And I, for the listeners that are listening, I'm smiling because that's the response I was hoping I'd get, because you get people that I talked to, and okay, take me through the process. And I said, well, there's steps I will take you through, but the process is different, like our fingerprints for every single person that we deal with. But people are so conditioned to have a cookie cutter response. And part of that is because of the education system that we experience in North America and really around the world. Everything's supposedly structured, and there's, A, B equals C, you put in or a recipe, you follow your recipe and you're making something, which you understand. We're going to talk about that too. And we put some stuff into the recipe, and if you follow the recipe, you should get the result, right? It doesn't work that way, listeners, in life. It just does not. As Amy put, we have so much learned behavior, like that client you mentioned, really wasn't connected to that family value that was pounded into her. And I have to say that was pounded into me as well, especially with such a large family. I only have two siblings, but my dad was one of 18 and my mom was one of 9. So I have lots of relatives, lots of family, and the same message was always screaming, family, family. And I'm not against family. I love family. But as I come into my own, listen to that, listeners, as you come into your own and you have your own realization of what your value system is, you make choices. I love my family, but I choose to deal with them in the doses of their reality and mine that is comfortable. It doesn't mean that everything about life is family for me. It's about memories with my family in doses that follow my value system. So I love the fact that you brought that up about family, because so many of us are conditioned to like certain things. Look at how many people like specific. We're going to go into inanimate objects that love a certain type of vehicle because their parents did, and they buy it their whole life. And so, why do you buy that? My dad bought it. My mom bought it. Why do you do things this way when you cook? My mom used to do it. Okay, so we're all full of patterns of learned behavior, but we can shed that. I like that, right?
And that, to that end, it's recognizing there is nothing wrong if my values and the things that matter to me are different than what I was taught. There's not necessarily a good or bad, like one of my clients, she realized that one of her values was power, or the things that mattered to her, it was power. And she's like, but I feel so bad saying it because power has this bad connotation. And it's recognizing, if that is who you are, that's what matters to you, embracing it. There's nothing wrong with it either way.
Well, yeah. And power, she's right. It does. Unfortunately, it's had some bad connotation, mostly because of our news media and because of entertainment. But really, power in the hands of good people is good. It elevates, it changes, it helps people climb instead of being camped. Yeah, it's just like anything. It can be used to corrupt and do poor things. We're seeing that a lot in the world today, being used poorly. I could say a few other choice words, but just being used poorly, when really at the essence of it, it's just like money. Money doesn't have a personality, neither does power. The person that wields it decides what it's going to do, right? Whether or not money is going to do good things or bad things. Power, same thing.
Yep.
So I love how I
always use the analogy of a knife. A knife can be used for good or bad. A surgeon can use it to save someone's life. A murderer can use it to kill someone, right? Like, so all of these things are merely tools. How can we see all of these things as tools, and how do I want to use it?
Yeah, I like that analogy. That's good. Good or bad, right? People just, they're so stuck, and it makes me sad, because I've been there, but I was blessed and highly favored to have somebody that cared enough for me in my early 20s that started me on the journey of personal development and peeling back my onion and just discovering who I wanted to be and who I was. Listeners, people watching, it's something that's going to happen for the rest of your life till you take your last breath. I hope you're always trying to level up and climb and not stay camped, because life has so much to offer. and you have so much to offer to others. So never discount your value.
Mhm.
And if you don't understand your value, Amy's perfect person. You could touch base with her and she can help you, peel back your onion and help you with your value propositions of life and how you want to
Mhm.
live. So, Amy, you work for some fairly big corporations in your career, and in most large companies, it's easy to lose oneself. Can you tell me what it was like leading global teams in the organizations I mentioned prior, and what led you to leave? What was your biggest driving force?
It was you get stuck in the hamster wheel and you get stuck into what it means to be successful. And this is where a lot of those shoulds come in, right? Like, because you're surrounded by other people that are in that same boat, where it's your performance review is what matters, and that's success. How long does it take you to get promoted? What kind of projects are you doing? How many people are you managing? What is the right next step? And this kind of goes to when we were talking about process, right? Like, there's a formula. It is a linear path. And if you're not following that linear path, then you're no longer successful. And so, I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I enjoyed my work. And then there was the realization that there's just so many politics, and am I really making a difference in life? And is this really what I want to do in life? I think there were two pivotal moments in my career that really stick out for me. One was I was a brand manager at Clorox, and I was the brand manager on Hidden Valley Ranch dressing. And we were launching a Greek yogurt dressing. I had to sit in a room with the team lawyer, and I was asking him, what's the minimum amount of Greek yogurt we have to legally put into this launch to legally call it Greek yogurt dressing? And something just shifted in me when I asked that question. I'm like, wait, is this really what my life has come to? I am in a room with the team lawyer trying to cost save and trick the consumer into buying this thing that is probably not even good for them. And so in that moment, I realized I don't know what I want to do, but I know it's not this. And that was the start of my longing to just kind of quit and do this eat, pray, love thing and go travel the world and figure out what I wanted to do in life.
What
But
an epiphany, though, right? What an epiphany to happen over Greek, like a yogurt dressing, Greek yogurt dressing. But you never know when things are going to happen, when that mental light bulb is going to go off. I love that.
Mhm. And the thing is, like, I already knew there was a stirring inside of me that was telling me something just doesn't feel right. I just don't know what. But it's scary because I don't know what's next. So I'm just going to stay here and, I'll think my way to a solution. And when I figure out the solution, then I'll jump ship and go to the next solution. And there's actually an Albert Einstein quote that I love, and it is, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And it was Albert Einstein who said this. And it's something that I always go back to, because we try to think our way to happiness. We try to think our way to fulfillment. And that's what I was trying to do. I was like, well, surely I'm smart enough. I have my MBA. I have my master's and all these things. Surely I can come up with a solution for what I want to do in life next. And so I was too scared to jump ship. And it was in that moment that all of a sudden all the pieces kind of came together. And I was like, okay, I'm not happy. And me staying here is not going to serve me in trying to figure out what's next. And I need to just get away from this to figure it out.
That's I love it, though. Realization is when you start having that, you mentioned that it was already happening to you prior to that, that dressing
Mhm.
experience, we'll call it, which it makes me smile. And it's just, I love how people's epiphanies come about and their realizations. And I think there's so many people that have the seeds of that going on right now. Listeners, if you have that,
Mhm.
you need to water it. And what's that water going to be? Maybe it's Amy. Maybe it's myself. Maybe there's so many people out there there's a plethora of people on this planet that need help. Just find somebody you resonate with, right? And try to find out your values, try to figure out where you want to be. And living in that linear life that society has told us we have to live, go to work, go home, get paid, rinse, repeat, start again, living on that hamster wheel, you don't deserve that unless you choose to deserve it, right?
Mhm.
If you choose to want to go on that path, good for you. If you're completely happy and satisfied, most people that are listening to this podcast or watching it aren't though. And that's what they're looking for. Maybe you're on the cusp or you've started trying to change and you found some people that are just, they're kind of helping you, but you're kind of feeling still spiraling out of control or in that rabbit hole or lost and sometimes off the hamster wheel, sometimes on. That could be an indicator that you're not working with the right person, right?
Mhm.
Or the person that you're working with, you're not listening to them. That happens as well, right? So it works both ways. But yeah, I love that. Think our way to happiness, right? What an amazing conversation. Listeners, I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. So you pivoted in January 2020, sold
Mhm.
everything, took a one-way flight to Ghana with your husband to volunteer at a breast cancer nonprofit. That must have had its character building moments in your life. Can you share some of why that nonprofit? Was there anything specific that drew you to this nonprofit?
Yeah, so a variety of reasons. And I always think things happen for a reason if you look for those things. And so when we knew we were leaving, we knew we wanted to do volunteer work. And as I was doing research, what I learned is there are so many fake nonprofits out there in these countries in Africa. They know that Westerners want to come, do good, and leave. And so there are, for example, orphanages where they will steal kids from the streets, kidnap kids, and open up this orphanage in front of you. They're taking care of the kids, they have you play with them, and behind the scenes, they're like caging up the kids, they're abusing the children, and they're doing it for money. And so you have to be very, very careful with how you select the nonprofit. And part of the challenge for me was the nonprofits that actually need help are the ones that cannot do the marketing to reach us. And then there are the ones that do have the money and they market to the Western world. And when you pay them, because most nonprofits you also have to pay to go there, most of your money goes back into the organization, paying the organizers or like paying for your car to drive you every day. Very little actually goes to helping the nonprofits. And so when we were doing our research, it was really important for us that we worked for an organization that truly needed the help and that our money and our time would contribute to that nonprofit. And believe it or not, it was so hard to find something like that. And it was a lot of research. And I nearly gave up on it. I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to find this. Maybe we just show up in Africa and look for an organization locally. But I was working at Google at the time, and a speaker came in. And I say things happen for a reason because I never go to these talks. For some reason, I showed up at the top. I stayed through the end. For some reason, I ended up talking to the lady, and I mentioned to her that I'm leaving a company soon, and I'm, trying to find an organization really interested in Western Africa. And she was like, I know the perfect organization for you. Let's have lunch. And that's how I got introduced to the nonprofit, because the lady that came to speak used to work for Susan G. Komen. She was, I think, like VP of marketing there. So they had built up relationships with a lot of local breast cancer organizations. She and I had lunch, and part of it for her was she was checking me out to make sure I actually wanted to do good and wasn't just one of those people that wanted to drop in, make myself feel good, and leave. So we had lunch. We really got along. And then she connected me to this nonprofit. And it is a hospital started by this amazing female surgeon who's absolutely brilliant, has the biggest heart. And she's dedicated her life to helping women with breast cancer in Ghana. And it touched me for a variety of reasons. One, I have my family history of breast cancer, and my sister was actually at the time just still going through chemo. And two, I have a huge passion for helping women, and so it kind of aligns on many aspects. And the founder was just this amazing woman, and I still support them today.
That's amazing. We have a family history of breast cancer as well.
Mhm.
So that's one of the reasons why when I was reading it keyed on that. And there's always usually a specific reason
Mhm.
why people want to pick specific types of support for whether it's a nonprofit or whatever the case may be, maybe even donating money. Excuse me, I agree
Yeah.
with you that things happen for a reason, though. They happen for us, not to us, right?
Mhm.
So you sitting in that room when you normally wouldn't have gone, that's yeah, your
Yeah.
calling was calling you.
Yeah. And just being open to that too. It's are you open to whatever life brings for you?
Taking risk, yeah, and not living in fear. So many people live in fear of, what am I doing? What am I getting into? I'm going to leave Google and go to this. What am I, people, I guarantee you had some judgmental people. I'd be
Oh, I
shocked if you
had
didn't.
I
The
had
the critics,
plenty.
the critics of
Yep.
the world.
Everyone was like, "Are you bananas? You're leaving Google? Everyone's trying to get in and you're leaving. Can I take your job? Like, are you insane?" Like all these comments.
Yeah, and if we don't learn to shut out that noise or just smile and nod our heads and let people, you know, and I find most people that will comment and be our critics and our naysayers aren't happy in their own lives. So they
Mhm.
like attacking other people's lives and what they're doing so that they can avoid their own trauma or lack of drive, right? So they live in a life of fear. They don't even
Yeah.
understand that really fear is an acronym that means face everything and rise.
Mhm.
What are you telling yourself? Right? What are we
Yeah.
what kind of people do you hang around? What are they telling you? What do you, again, back to the association thing we talked about earlier?
Mhm. And I have a lot of people that after they hear my story, they're like, "Oh, that was amazing that you're able to do this. I wish I could do that too." Then they follow it with "but." And then there's a whole laundry list of
I
reasons.
hate that word.
Well, but I am the breadwinner of my family right now and I can't do that. But I'm at the prime baby making age and I can't do that. But, right? And there's all these reasons. Or I'm just not as courageous as you. And I promise you, I'm not any more courageous than anyone out there. Like I had my fears, I had all these shoulds in my head. Like it was not an easy decision for me. It is admitting that you have the fear. It's like nobody is born courageous, nobody is fearless. We all have fears, and being able to recognize, yes, I have this fear, and what am I going to do about it now?
Yeah, it's, people in general get into that comfort zone, and success in all, even the beginning success stages of our lives is always outside of that comfort zone. It's, yeah, it's scary, but just surround yourself, listeners, with people that will be there for that journey and hold you to a standard that you've never ever experienced before by taking you through a journey. And yes, journeys in life can be scary, but I'd rather know in life that I've tried and failed than failed
Mhm.
before I ever tried. And I just stuck in that rut. We're all a culmination of tripping, skinning our knees, people that are successful, people that, such as Amy and myself, that coach and help other people. We didn't one day wake up and went, "Oh, geez, we're this person. We get to do this." We've gone through our own trials and tribulations, and again, skinned our knees, got up, brushed ourselves off, realized, hey, that person I'm dealing with or it's in my life, if I see them and they make me feel like a pit in my stomach, or I'm not excited to see them another time to reevaluate your
Mhm.
associations, right? You should always, I want to leave people wanting to see me again. And that's the type of people I want in my life too, right? So
Mhm.
it's a synergy. I love this conversation though. And, you talk about the fact of, you normally wouldn't attend. You had the lunch with a speaker, and then you led into the fact that your sister was going through that. So there was commonalities as to why it happened. That event
Mhm.
happened. You meeting that person and that nonprofit being for breast cancer. It's all tied together. Life has got such fine threads, and we don't want to admit that our life is connected like a spider web, right? So that's amazing that you ended up in that circumstance, attending something. So another thing I want to add though, listeners, if you have a gut feeling to do something that you normally don't do, your gut is a huge, great radar, and we ignore it all the time, right? So
It is very much people try to as we were talking about earlier, they try to think their way, and thinking your way just doesn't work. The mind was not created for joy and happiness. It was created for survival. That's our number one instinct, right? Like when the trees rustle, is there a saber-toothed tiger? And the thing for most of us is having that is good to an extent, right? Like when the trees rustle, is there a saber-tooth tiger? That's a good thing, because when saber-tooth tiger comes, you're ready. But too many of us sit in that all the time. So it's being able to recognize, like, how long do I want to sit in that? You know,
yeah.
having your hand on a hot stove, it's a good thing to feel the pain, because then you know, oh, my hand is on the hot stove. Then you need to make a choice. Do I take my hand off the hot stove, or do I keep it there just simmering? And most of us keep our hand on the hot stove.
Yeah, it's so true though. Sometimes in life, one of my good mentors and friends, he's done this talk many times and spoken at events, and we've become really good friends. And he always talks about the fact that life is about ABC. You have to take action in order to have belief. Along the route of action, you're going to skin your knees, you're going to figure
Mhm.
things out, you're going to find out what is going to work better the next day. It's going to increase your believability in what it is you want to achieve, or what you thought maybe you wanted to achieve is wrong, and you'll pivot, and you'll develop a pattern of consistency, and just every day ABC, action, belief, consistency. And we all have the ability to succeed, but we let, again, that fear hold us back.
Mhm.
And that fear sometimes is tied to, again, like we've already talked about, our associations and what we're feeding ourselves, who we have in our lives. Are they supporters? Like, I don't have a problem with people saying to me, are you sure about that? Because
Mhm.
it's how they present it to me, right? They're caring, they're compassionate individuals. They're just wanting to make sure that I've actually put the thought process in, and again, gone from more than just thought. Have I tried it? Have I done some research? Have I talked to people that have gone that
Mhm.
journey or path? Have I put in the work? Have I taken the actions so that I have belief? And
Mhm.
it is my belief now that I have it. Am I doing the consistent actions or associating with the right people to achieve it? So good for you. I love this story. I love this. The whole story of your life is, and obviously your story is still unfolding and then continuing on.
Mhm.
But I love interviewing and having conversations with people that are always striving to be the better version of themselves, and realizing that it's going to happen up forever.
Yeah,
So
and it's a never ending journey. A
yeah,
lot of a lot of people think, oh, once I get there, then life will be happy and dandy. And the thing is, life is a journey. It is a continuous, like there is no end to the growth and the personal development and self-discovery. We are constantly changing. And if you are not changing and growing, then you're dying, because
yeah.
you're just stale.
You're stuck on that hamster wheel, and you just, and the sad thing is when you, like you mentioned, being stale, people go through that life and they work until whatever day that they retire. And you look at the statistics of people that are stuck too much, and they stop growing, and they're just living in that hamster wheel. They retire and they pass away within a few years, because our brain is a giant computer. We need to feed it things. We need to
Mhm.
be excited about the adventures that are we're currently on, or that are coming up. Otherwise, our brain just kind of, what's the purpose of living?
Yep.
I don't have enough money because nobody ever taught me. Again, I own a financial planning business, so I get this quite often. They don't have enough, right?
Mhm.
So they're sitting in their houses, living in quiet desperation, waiting for that day that they pass away, and it comes sooner than later because their brain just kind of shuts off. They shut down,
Mhm.
and they're gone within a few years. It's the people that are active, that are always constantly leveling up and climbing. Of my older clients in their 80s and 90s, they're always volunteering, they're doing things to keep their mind engaged, and they have conversations and they talk about the past. They don't live in the past. When they talk about the
Mhm.
past, it's through excitement and joy, and it's not boo-hoo woo-hoo. It's just they're sharing. But then they can also pivot and they can talk about, oh, this happened last week, I volunteered doing this, or I did that, and or the neighbor needed this done and I went over and did it. Like my parents are prime examples of that. We're always stuck, most of us, but you don't have to be. We can climb. It's just we need to do whatever it takes to get to that point.
Mhm. Completely agree.
So, Amy, on a more personal note, I watched your 9 fun facts about Amy. Absolutely loved it. As I mentioned to you prior, you're a foodie. I love that. You dream up food creations in your sleep. That is so fantastic. Tell me of the most interesting creation you dreamed up, and how did the end result turn out?
The my most prized creation is my French toast waffle witch. Uh, I love all breakfast foods. And I love being able to mix and match. For some reason, the savory plus the sweet together, it just tastes amazing. So, and my favorite thing is the waffle iron and waffles, because waffles are the best. They are crispy on the outside, soft on the inside if you make it right, and it's a Belgian waffle. So I went to sleep and I was just thinking about what joy I will have in the morning when I make my breakfast. And I woke up with this idea of, oh my gosh, I could make a French toast waffle, which, and what that is two pieces of bread dipped into an egg mixture, just like you would make a French toast. But you then turn it into a sandwich. So in between, you can make it savory, you can make it sweet, you can put in ham and cheese, you can put in bananas and Nutella, and you turn it into sandwich, stick it into your waffle iron, press it, and let it do its thing, and it comes out looking like a waffle, but it's tastes kind of like a French toast because of the bread. And then inside it's like a sandwich with whatever goodies you wanted to put in it. And the
Wow.
first the first time I made it, I was standing in front of my waffle iron. I was giggling because I was so excited about what the outcome would be. And my partner was like, why are you giggling at the waffle iron? But it is absolutely delicious and you can just do so much with it.
It sounded that is so creative. Reminds me something like those. I don't know if you ever experienced them. You have around a campfire and you open up the iron and you put bread and people will buy canned fruit like they use in a pie or whatever and put in the
Mhm.
middle, and they'll put it in the fire and it cooks it. Inside is whatever you want to put in there, like you said, bread on
Mhm.
the outside. But it never ever thought about doing it in a waffle iron. That is, and making it savory, sweet, like you said, bananas, Nutella, whatever you want to put in there.
Mhm.
Maybe it's somebody with PBJ, put peanut butter and jelly in between. You could do that too. It would, and along with that waffle iron and the bread and the egg, that would,
Mhm.
wow.
And
Listeners, go
if you
try that
want to
out.
if you want to make it extra sweet, you could put maple syrup on it, you could put honey, add some whipped
Or
cream.
icing sugar. I've seen people do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that's
The options are endless, which is why it brought me I was like, "Oh, you could do pretty much everything with this."
that's awesome. So another pivot, you love to sing and dance around, however, not best with the lyrics, as you mentioned in your nine things of Amy. And as well, we're a wedding planner for some time. Did you
Uh-huh.
ever think of being a wedding singer because you like to dance around and sing?
No, because they would probably fire me because I would have no clue what I would. I don't know lyrics at all. That's why my husband always makes fun of me. I'm like running around singing songs, but I don't know the lyrics. So I just start making up stuff, and then I start humming, and I'm like, ha 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 ha. And he's like, okay. So I could be like a comedic wedding singer. That might work, but for people to hire me seriously to actually sing real songs, probably not.
I love it. Yeah, I thought that would be a fun thing for people that want to know about you. After I watched that and I was going through and designing how I wanted to, go through this conversation to make sure, because I like getting the listeners and for yourself potentially that you can use this as a calling card, a business card. You want to know more about Amy? Hey, listen to this podcast.
Mhm,
It gives you, from origin all the way up to where she is today and gives you a good snapshot.
mhm,
It's not totally in depth, but it gives a good enough snapshot where we get to know and understand and appreciate who you are, right? Who you've
mhm.
become in life. So yeah, comedic wedding singer.
And a part of the 9 fun facts, it shows a little bit of my playfulness. Like, I always say, I will always be a kid, and laughter is so important. There are studies, I don't know how they research this, but kids laugh and giggle, I think, around like 300 times a day. And then as adults, we became so serious that we do it 300 times every 2 or 3 months,
Wow, that's a
right?
big difference.
So we need to laugh and do silly things like make French toast waffle witch and sing at the top of our lungs more often.
That's true though. Unbelievably true. We need to tap into our inner child and get back to that amount of laughter per day, as you mentioned, as opposed to what we become as adults.
Mhm.
So,
Actually, while I was traveling, this gentleman I met in Albania, one of the things that stuck out for me that he said was, "Why are Americans so serious?" Or, why is everyone in the Western world so serious and always in a rush? At the end, it's just death for all of us. So why are we all so serious and rushing off to finish things? Because when you finish, you're just dead. And that
yeah,
really stuck with me to remember that, like, life doesn't have to be so serious all the time.
yeah, it doesn't. Life is in session. This isn't a dress rehearsal, but that doesn't mean you have to be so stoic and focused all the time.
Mhm,
For me, in my journey of life, it's all about creating memories. It's not about chasing wealth. Yes, I like money. Everybody does. For
mhm.
me, it's all about legacy planning and creating memories because today's the present. You and I are talking right now. There's no promise for this afternoon. There's no
Yeah.
promise for this evening. I have this moment. So be
Mhm,
engaged in the moment of life that you're in right now, listeners, and don't apologize for wanting to act silly or not work, and you have the ability to be flexible like myself and decide, hey, I'm not doing this from this to this time. I'm going to go hang out with my daughter and grandkids, or hey, I want
mhm.
to go do this. I want to take the dog to the dog park. Those little memories are going to mean more to you and keep you energized and pushing forward than constantly going, oh, I have to finish all this stuff between this hours and this hour, and then tonight I got to do the laundry and I got this and that, and next day is the same thing, and the next day is the same thing.
Mhm.
You have to have variety in your life. You have to live a life of enjoying the moments.
Yeah, and oftentimes people say, "I can't, I don't have the time," and it's not that you can't, and it's not that you don't have the time, it's how are you choosing? How can you look at what is possible? How can you do it?
Absolutely. So you mentioned in 9 things that you used to dislike speaking. Now you love it as you pushed yourself outside your comfort zone. Personally,
Mhm.
all of my clients, as well as my success, has always been just outside of my comfort zone and not being afraid to take risks. What have you done to get past the fear of public speaking?
So that was probably the gift of working at Google. Prior to my days at Google, I absolutely hated it. And I still remember, I think it was like my first or second month there, I had to, because I was leading the global marketing function and we were giving a virtual presentation. And my boss was like, okay, so these few slides, you'll be presenting it. And I got so nervous. My throat was choking. Had all my notes in front of me. And I told him from the start, like, I I don't really like this public speaking thing. Like, I know I have to do it, but I really don't like it. Like, and I was trying to figure out how to get out of doing it. And my director, who is the most amazing boss in the world, knew that it would help me by pushing me to do it. So one thing that stuck out for me that he did was he emailed me one day, and the email basically said, Amy, I was supposed to speak at this conference. I can no longer make it. Can you do it on my behalf? It was this huge conference for 700 people in an audience. I would fly there, be on a stage, and speak. There was a huge part of me that was like, ooh, find a reason why you can't, like you have a doctor's appointment or something.
Yeah.
But I knew that it would help me to grow. And so before I could overthink it, I quickly responded, yes, I would love to, and hit send before I could take it back. And from there on, like that was the first time where it was hard. It was not easy. I practiced a lot. I took classes. I practiced in front of friends. We were on a trip to Palm Springs, and we were like hanging out the pool, and I was giving this presentation that to them around, like food and produce and stuff. And so it's just pushing myself out of my comfort zone and
Yeah.
recognizing um, that it was just a fear that I had versus I'm not good at it. Because I kept telling myself, oh, I'm just not good at it. But it wasn't that I'm not good at it. It was a fear that I would fail, that I would look stupid, all of those things.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. Like that's what I've taught so many people to. The easiest way for me to get past my fear is realizing that it's an acronym that can stand for so many things. And as I mentioned prior, I
Mhm.
just always think about it's face everything and rise. Every time new discoveries in my life or new challenges come up that I'm scared of, and I think to myself, you know what? I'm not going to let fear grip me. Instead, fear is pivoting on its head, and I'm facing everything and rising. I don't care if I look dumb. I don't care how many mistakes I make. I remember the first time I ever spoke on stage, and thank goodness I had a suit jacket on because the pockets were huge, right? And I wear fedoras and stuff. Thank goodness I, had a hat on too because I was sweating profusely. It would have, if you got no hair, it just runs down into your eyes. So, yeah, I can appreciate the fact that you just pushed yourself. You hit send,
Mhm.
and then you did whatever it took
Mhm.
to better yourself and be the best version of Amy for that opportunity. So, congratulations, good for
Thank
you.
you. And oftentimes, the thing that we're most afraid of is failure. And a great acronym, since we're on to acronyms for fail, is first attempt in learning.
Yeah,
And it's also recognizing that it is not a failure unless you don't get up, you didn't learn from it, and you don't try again. So
agreed.
if you stay down and you didn't learn anything, then sure, that's a failure. But if you get up and you try again, it was not a failure.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to think. And yeah, it's just there's so many different ways that our thought processes have been corrupted by society, and the
Mhm.
norms of society. But, again, listeners, people watching, if after listening to this podcast, you don't have hope for some of the things that Amy has experienced and was able to push past, right? You need to listen to it again, or again, reach out to Amy or myself. I'm pretty sure that with a conversation, even a first conversation, we can help you have faith that there's better for you in tomorrow, right? And help you get past your fears and start climbing and not be camped, right? Society has allowed so many of us to think that we have to stay in a little bubble when really at the end of the day, you want to get past that bubble and grow and continue to climb.
Mhm.
So, Amy, I love that you're tenacious as I am. And the story of someone telling you that you would never be good at science because you're a girl and then you accomplished a computer science degree is fantastic. You mentioned never underestimate someone's potential and most importantly, your own.
Mhm.
Potential is fine. However, action is what takes it to the next level. Any insight out as how to one discovers their own potential and goes to that next level or stage?
So discovering your own potential is part of it. is dabbling. And I often have people come to me that are like, oh, well, I need to figure out what I'm good at and what I would love. And, you know, but how they're trying to figure out is by reading or by watching videos or talking to people. And I love analogy. So, you know, the analogy that I always use is, if you're trying to figure out what sport do I like or that I'm good at, you cannot just watch videos of everyone in the world playing the sports, read books about how to play the sport, talk to people who have played the sport to figure out, am I good and will I like it? It's like, if I want to figure out if I'm good at swimming, and all I ever do is watch YouTube videos of swimmers and read books about how to swim and never even dip my toe in the water. And so I always use that analogy and say, you know, how do I dabble at things? It's not jumping fully in the water, but can I dabble? Can I put my toe in the water to see, do I even like the water? Do I enjoy this? And then am I any good at it?
Yeah, that's that realization of dabbling is so key, because you look at how many people, um, I know so many people on it, because you pick sports that they, my cousin was one prime example. He was pushed through hockey, lost his whole childhood because his parents, he was going to make the NHL.
Mhm.
They burned him out so bad. He was gone most of his high school years, wasn't even around his folks. They sent him off to his school. You know, he got a scholarship to play college hockey and this and that. That when he finally did get drafted by an NHL team, he quit. He never even went to camp. They literally, because that wasn't what he wanted.
Mhm.
He was living other people's dreams and aspirations, and he didn't really get to figure out, just because he was good at it, is that what he wanted? So I like that realization of what you brought up, that isn't just because you're good at something doesn't mean that's what you should be doing,
Mhm.
right?
And how will you know that you could be good at it unless you've actually
Tried.
experimented and
Yeah.
tried?
But he did try. And I remember as a kid, when he'd come home, when he's probably 10 years older than I am, he'd come home and I'd hear stories about how he was belligerent, or he wasn't, you know what I mean? There were signs that he really wasn't happy. So
Mhm.
you're right, you have to try to find out. But then there's, on the flip side, society keeps people pigeonholed into something they think that you want to do. Careers, how many people go to school because their parents say that's what they should do?
Mhm.
How many people take on, whatever in life because somebody else is saying it, and they never truly discover, they're stuck. And that, like you said, with today's technology, people watch a video and they don't even know whether or not they're going to be good at swimming, never dip their toe into the pool.
Mhm.
So I'm encouraging people, just like Amy would, go dip your toe in the pool, but don't do it because other people are telling you to do it. Do it because it's something that you can feel, that flame inside of you that's saying, you know what, I want to dip my toe in the pool. I'm tired of watching these videos. Oh, I dipped my toe in the pool. I tried it a few times. It's not me.
Mhm.
Next. It's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay to pivot and change in life.
Yeah. And as you dip, it's what do I like about this? What do I not like about this? And how can I take that knowledge into whatever is next?
Yeah, there's always stepping stones and building blocks from our things that we try in life, and we can better that, learn from it. Maybe it's, oh, I know it didn't work in that. Why would I think it work here? So just keep on
Mhm.
pushing forward and trying new things, and realizing that it's never a mistake when stuff happens. You didn't like the water, it's not a mistake, it's a life lesson. Next, move on.
Mhm. And you're not stuck with it. If you try it, you don't like it, you can change, you can shift, you can try something different. You're not stuck with one thing. And that's also something that I've seen so many people come with, where they're like, oh, I need to figure out the one thing. And if I don't, then I'm a failure. Or, you know, if I do the wrong thing, then I'm stuck with it for life. I'm like, you're not stuck with it for life. You have a choice after too.
Oh, of course. So many people take that failure or inability to complete something and they make it their identity. Oh, I tried this and it didn't work. So why would I try anything else? The same result's going to happen. That's not the case, right?
Mhm.
So that's awesome. So, Amy, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
I would say to be aware of your mindset. I always believe, and this is one of my greatest learnings on my entire journey, your mindset, not your circumstance, makes all the difference in your happiness and success. There's been all this research that shows what we're calling our experience, 80% of it comes from your mind. You're creating it in your mind. Only 20% is the actual circumstance or situation, right? So, how can you shift your mindset and what are you focused on? That's the most important thing to be able to shift and make a difference in your overall happiness and success in life.
That is an excellent message. Listeners, rewind and listen to that again, because life is about mindset. 100%. We just need to do whatever to feed our mind the right things. As I mentioned prior, our mind is a giant computer. It thrives on new data, new information, new experiences. Obviously, good information, good experiences, all right? But you're not going to always have that 100% of the time. And just be willing to realize, oh, okay, that wasn't a great experience. I'm not going to do that again. What did I learn from it? Move forward. Don't make that your identity. Make it your purpose and your reason to continue to level up and rise in life, right? So our time is almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what is the best way to reach you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Amy C. Yip. So AMY, the letter C as in cat, YIP, or my website is amyyipcoaching.com. Again, that's amyyipcoaching.com.
Awesome. I'll make sure that these go in all those show notes. Listeners, you can access the show notes and a link to the podcast to share with others. If you're not comfortable sharing the service you're listening to this on, go to giveaheck.com/podcast, and you'll have the ability to share it on social media or email it to friends and family, as well as look at the show notes and find out how to contact Amy. And for those of you that are new in the journey of listening to podcasts and self-development, I know there's people out there that don't necessarily feel comfortable reaching out. If you want and you're comfortable with me, I can help you connect to Amy. So feel free to reach out to myself. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Amy. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.